You fat slob, let's see if you have any guts.
You know what? This would make a great children's cartoon. Oh, TROMA. You never fail to bring joy to the world. For those not in the know, TROMA Entertainment is the world's longest surviving independent film company, thriving in particular on producing supremely gross, gory, and wacky-as-hell horror and gore comedies, as well as distributing all sorts of madcap DIY films from all over the world. A fair amount of famous people have actually had their start at TROMA. This list includes Matt Stone and Trey Parker of South Park fame, who debuted with Cannibal the Musical, and James Gunn, who is now most famous for his Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The company has tons of wild, weird, and wonderful films under their belt, particularly those written and directed by company founder Lloyd Kaufman, who is a big spokesperson for independent filmmaking and generally a well-loved figure in the DIY and horror film communities. Hell, it's to a point where both he and his own fans affectionately call him Uncle Lloydie. And his most famous movie would be The Toxic Avenger, where a nerdy teenager mutates into a monstrous superhero who violently deals out justice against criminals after falling into a barrel of toxic waste. And yes, I do have a copy of the movie with Lloyd's autograph, and yes, I do have Lloyd's autograph on like 4 other things, and yes, I am bragging, and yes, I do sleep with these things on a regular basis, and yes, this does make me better than you. For all intents and purposes, Toxie, as he is affectionately called, is, in Lloyd's own words, the Mickey Mouse of TROMA, and it seems someone agreed. Because in 1990, that someone clearly thought the guy who literally tears people limb from limb in gruesome fashion would be a great children's cartoon hero. And thus, probably with a little push from the popularity of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Toxic Avenger got himself an animated series, and it was called the Toxic Crusaders. I've never actually seen the show, but I have actually known about it for a while. I bought an old no-zone toy at a flea market when I was a kid, and I do have one issue of the Danish version of the comic book, which I honestly have no idea where the hell I got from. So you can imagine I've always been a little curious. And thankfully, not only is the whole show available on DVD, you can actually watch it for free over on TROMA's own YouTube channel. So there's really no excuse to not finally check it out.
What's that, Toxie? Yes, that's right. The Toxic Crusaders work for the environment. That's right. They're good cartoons and they're environmental. Oh, greetings from Tromaville, kiddies.
Oh my god. Of course it takes him like 6 seconds to take the piss out of everything. It's good to know he never changes. Yep, the DVD starts with Lloyd giving a long spiel about how Toxic Crusaders never got picked up for syndication and only ended up lasting 1 season. And it's done with his usual hilarious anti-industry soapboxing.
Toxie was well on his way to becoming a household word, and we were going to have all this great merchandise to shill. And then the evil men from the big corporations came, and they took Toxie away. Can you say devil-worshipping international media conglomerate?
Now, having actually met the man, I can confirm that this is exactly the kind of shit he pulls if you give him half a chance, and it's just as glorious in real life. And with that, we've made it to the theme song.
Toxic Crusaders, Toxic Crusaders. I had no friends, no girls that hugged me till I got radioactive ugly. Toxic Crusaders, Toxic Crusaders.
Yep, it's rad as hell. It's energetic, it's silly, it's catchy, it's everything we need. But then TROMA always had awesome theme songs.
Toxic Avenger. Rise up to the high
But anyway, the first episode gives us Toxie's backstory as we meet Melvin Jungo, a hopeless nerd working as a janitor at the Tromaville gym. And naturally, since this was the late 80s to early 90s, that means the cool kids decide to lure him in for a little prank with fake promises of a date. And I would condemn them for doing such a thing, but Melvin makes mocking him frighteningly easy, even for me.
So, what are you doing tonight, huh?
Well, at 7 o'clock I practice burping. At 8 I wax my chicken.
Whoa, dude, too much info.
I want you to wear a special outfit on our date tonight.
A tutu? Oh, gee, I don't know.
Now, Melvin, be fair. If you can rave about your fab habits, then she can talk about her crossdresser fetish. That's equality. Well, much like in the movie, a ton of bullies show up to laugh at his outfit, resulting in him falling out of the window and into a barrel full of toxic waste, which causes a terrible mutation.
I'm changing into a school teacher! Oh no! I'm changing into something even more horrible now! I'm turning into...
A movie producer.
Oh, 90s TV. You and your dated references to Hollywood scare and someone's been molested. But no, the mutation continues, turning Melvin into Toxie, a big, green, hideously deformed creature of superhuman size and strength. And believe me, if you ever watch this show, you're gonna hear that phrase a lot. Who also is now immune to radiation and nuclear waste, and has an advanced evil detecting sense.
And my mop is alive.
And also his mop is alive. What? So, with his newfound appearance and powers, Toxie moves to the Tromaville dump, soon to be joined by other mutated heroes, and they spend the rest of the series fighting against evil forces seeking to pollute the Earth. And there's your premise. Yeah, it is sort of a mishmash of other popular cartoons of the 80s. Most obviously, it mixes the environmental message from Captain Planet and the Planeteers with the light-hearted meta-humor and gross-out mutant aesthetic of the beloved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, in exchange for the original film's violence. And since franchises like the Ninja Turtles thrive on their toy-friendly character design, let's take a look at what Toxic Avenger has to offer in that regard. The heroes that join Toxie's team are No Zone, a mutated pilot that can sneeze powerful gusts of wind from his gigantic honker, Headbanger, the melted together body of a surfer dude and a mad scientist, Junkyard, a hobo mutated into a dog, and Major Disaster, the plant-controlling former army general. Or the only useful one, as I like to call him, but we'll get back to that. And there's also Toxie's mom. No, seriously, that's what they all call her at all times. I don't think they ever give her a name. And I gotta say, she takes her son's mutation in stride, all things considered. And she even gets in some good singers here and there.
There's something familiar about this thing. Naturally, darling boy. It's got your face.
Yikes! Man, with moms like these, who needs supervillains? And finally, there's Yvonne, Toxie's smart, beautiful girlfriend.
Oh, I should have known this would happen. How could a beautiful, intelligent girl like Yvonne ever fall for a hideously deformed creature such as myself?
You're not ugly, you're very handsome. It's your tie that made me scream. Now that's ugly. I mean, more than ugly, it's gross.
Okay, so she's just beautiful.
Oh, and this lucky gal gets a whole other gag to her personality other than just being kinda dumb. She's a terrible musician, too.
Even though he's a yucky, my honeyman's a yuppie. He's a mover and a shaker.
Okay, look, boys, if you're not willing to put up with a little bit of wailing, then you don't even deserve a girl who's willing to do the cake stripper gag, alright? On the villain side, we have four-armed emo steampunk Dracula.
That's Dr. Killumoff to you.
Sorry, Dr. Killumoff, get it? Trying to pollute the planet in order to make it inhabitable for his species, the insectoid alien Smogulans. Which, now that I think about it, kinda makes him almost the exact same character as Lawrence Limburger from the later Biker Mice from Mars cartoon. No, seriously, check it out. He's a businessman, he has the purple suit, he's wearing a mask, he's actually an alien, he even has like a higher power boss he answers to sometime. Like, almost the only difference is that Limburger is a fish guy. I'm starting to wonder if this might be where the Biker Mice guys got the idea. And of course, no cartoon villain is complete without henchmen, so Killumoff has his very own Bebop and Rocksteady at his disposal. In this case, it's Bonehead, the mutated form of Melvin's former bully, and Psycho. Or as I like to call him, the best character! Much like everyone else, Psycho has a designated gag. He always predicts exactly how Dr. Killumoff's evil plan for the episode is gonna go wrong, no matter how ridiculous and contrived it is. And it's hysterical.
What if every trick we pull on them backfires because their sweet-natured innocence protects them? What if one of them hideously deformed mutants falls madly in love with me and blows the whole scheme? Someone known stranger comes to Tromaville and teams up with the Toxic Crusaders at the last minute and foils your plan. Don't be ridiculous!
And guess what? He's exactly right every time. It's almost like the show is deliberately shitting all over the formulaic tendencies of cartoons at the time in a glorious bit of biting the hand that feeds you humor. Which, knowing Lloyd, is probably exactly what's happening here. And speaking of Lloyd, the show actually does feature a Lloyd family as a cameo. Oh my god! Is that offensive? Should I be offended? I mean, It's Lloyd! Oh, and there's also Mayor Grody. He's fat, greedy, gross, and corrupt, and that's his whole character.
I hate this place. Every time I come here, I ruin another pair of shoes made from an endangered species.
Oh, don't worry about it, Mayor Grody. I'm sure Mr. Burns can hook you up.
These white slippers are albino, African, endangered rhino.
And there you have it. Those are the characters, that's the setup, that's the show. And for as weird an idea as it is to adapt something like the frickin' Toxic Avenger into a children's cartoon, I gotta say I kinda like it. The show usually follows any number of random cartoon sitcom tropes and do a sort of strange mix between montages of the Crusaders failing at whatever task they set out for that day and eventually stopping Killumov's plan. And honestly, it tends to be way funnier than it has any right to be. The Crusaders end up in all sorts of weird situations. Anything from going to a recital, fixing up an old car, being forcefully married to a smocular woman, to even having to just find day jobs.
Toxic Crusaders! You guys mind the store! I got an evil plan to carry out!
I would ask why nobody's taking notice of the two literal monsters behind the fast food counter, but this show takes place in Tromaville. They're just lucky nobody's turned into a chicken zombie yet.
On these flightless birds right out of this town.
And also that hasn't happened. The villains' plans, however, tend to get really weird. Like this fast food episode where they use a spice on the fries to turn everyone elderly and nearsighted. Or when they replace all the old ladies in town with alien clones to literally nag so hard at people that they move out of Tromaville. And a lot of the time, their plan is about to succeed, mainly because the Toxic Crusaders are such moronic goody two-shoes that they will try so hard to be good that it actually prevents them from fighting back. And this cartoon logic that openly defies how the real world, as well as other superhero shows, tend to work, is what brings forth some of the cartoon's funnier moments as far as I'm concerned. In one episode, Killumov has tricked Tromaville into thinking he's gone clean and built a recycling plant, which at the end turns out to be a smog-producing machine that the Crusaders can't turn off. So, what can our heroes do?
Major disaster. You must use your powers to teleport this place out of Tromaville.
Me? Move this place? But I only have control over vegetation and stuff.
Hey, this place is a recycling plant, isn't it?
Yeah, so?
So, plants are something Major Disaster can control.
Gosh, I never thought of it that way.
And guess what? It fucking works! If that's not funny, nothing is. Or even better, there's the episode where Mayor Grody instates a superhero licensing law that prevents them from fighting Killumov's troops. That is, until Toxie's mom finds a piece of paper that circumvents the law and lets them save the day anyway.
What was on that paper that your mom gave you back in the mayor's office? It must be a powerful document.
The most powerful. A note from my mother.
I actually had to pause the episode of this one. That's just genius. But speaking of funny, let's take a moment to talk about the show's sense of humor. Because while I find it funny, it might actually be one of the show's main drawbacks. See, the show may not be violent exactly, but that doesn't necessarily make it entirely kid-friendly. Now don't get me wrong, it's full of silly puns and cartoony antics for sure, but a lot of its humor comes from mocking the formulaic nature of the cartoon industry, and a lot of jokes aren't exactly subtle about being quite a bit dirtier than most 90s fare.
I'll help you with that, lady.
Okay, Mr. Earth, drop those pants. No, the ones in your hand.
Sorry.
You must be the male stripper. Everywhere I looked, I saw her face before me. I couldn't escape it. She was everywhere.
Wow, Toxie. Although that first one did make me think of a band she might be a perfect fit for.
Leave it to
Honestly, sometimes it feels more like a parody of 90s cartoons that was made for adults and escaped from one of the adult channels onto the Saturday morning lineup. Now, that is not a bad thing, but I think it might be one of the reasons the show didn't get very far. That, and for as funny as I genuinely think it is and as cool as the character designs are, the actual superhero part of the show is kind of boring.
It's a tough job. There's no general plan, and we don't get any piece of the merchandising.
I beg to differ, sir. In seriousness, though. Think about Ninja Turtles, since that's obviously this show's main inspiration. The reason the Turtles have enjoyed such longevity in all its incarnations is because its mutation gimmick allows almost any kind of wacky character to appear, even in the original comics where they just kind of threw stuff at the wall and saw what stuck. Any combination of personality traits, design aesthetics, and superpowers can show up at any time. Half the fun of tuning in on any version of the Turtles is seeing what kind of crazy creature with a cool toy-friendly design is gonna show up this time. And even outside of fighting prowess, each character has some very specific traits that drive stories and interactions, even when those traits are delivered as very simplistic, like in the 80s version. In Toxic Crusaders, though, all the heroes are basically the same character. And while it's funny that they're all so good-natured and so goody two-shoes that it reaches parody territory...
Excuse me, but I need this vehicle to fight evil.
None of them really have any distinguishable characteristics beyond that. And even their actual superpowers aren't very interesting. Toxie can sense evil, Headbanger invents something in like 2 episodes, and No Zone can sneeze wins. But from there, they basically just oil boil down to big and kinda strong. The only one with a unique power is Major Disaster, which is probably also why he's the one saving everyone's ass in half the episodes. Hell, he's even the only one to get a villain that fits his power set.
The name's Mower Man, but you can call me Mower Man. The next thing I knew, I was a hideously deformed gardener with superhuman shears and strength.
And on top of that, none of the 3 regularly appearing villains have any superhuman abilities or unique skill sets, and they almost never call in any new villains for us to enjoy, so... Can someone tell me what we're even tuning in for? What, you want to know how every episode of this show plays out? Well, here you go. Kill 'em Off stages a plan while the Crusaders deal with a random stock cartoon trope. At some point they have a fight scene against some radiation rangers, and the day is saved. And that's every episode in a nutshell.
In a nutshell is where it belongs.
You can make fun of the formula all you want, guys, but it's still there. All you're doing is whining about something you don't care enough to either subvert or embrace. It's not doing you any favors. And on top of everything else, the show isn't even consistent in its sense of humor. I mean, I get that it just goes for silliness, but it keeps going back and forth on its own running gags. Like, sometimes Kill 'Em Off is well aware that Psycho's predictions are usually right, and sometimes he denies it. And sometimes Toxie is the only one who likes Yvonne singing, and sometimes he hates it just as much as everyone else.
Let me sing you a song I wrote on that very subject.
Please, Yvonne. Hasn't he suffered enough?
And it clearly has no idea whether the gang is immune to toxic waste or not. In one episode, No Zone is being slowly lowered into toxic waste, and it's treated like a death trap. The guy is already basically a giant nose. What would dipping him in more mutant slime even do? Oh. Look, I can keep rambling about this, or I can keep throwing examples of actually pretty funny gags at you, but I think it's about time we wrap this up. So, if you want an idea of what this 13-episode cartoon is like, just take a look at Headbanger. Toxic Crusaders is a hilarious, yet hideously deformed identity crisis of a cartoon. Being a children's adaptation of R-rated source material, it's never entirely sure who it's trying to entertain the most, and its 2 halves keep being too busy arguing amongst themselves to actually be of much use, despite the way their individual potential shines through on occasion. It's a funny show if you're an 80s cartoon lover, or just a big old child at heart really. It's an interesting experiment if you're a TROMA fan, and it's fun to look at if you're into wacky, gross-out toy and character design. But if you're none of those things, you might end up just scratching your head and wondering what the fuck the deal is with this weird little cartoon. Honestly, you should really just go to TROMA's own YouTube page and watch the show for yourself for some nostalgic laughs. There's a pretty good chance you already know ahead of time whether or not you're gonna like it. And don't you worry, Lloyd. Toxie may not have become the household name you were hoping for, but you're still every indie film fan's very own lovable Uncle Lloydie.
Well, kids, it's time for Uncle Lloydie to go and cash his welfare check. Bye, kids.
Oh shit, that's today? My booze money! Hey there, Trauma Tots! Thanks for turning into this review of Toxic Crusaders. If you enjoyed hearing me ramble about hideously deformed creatures of superhuman size and strength, please press the like button and leave a comment below. Perhaps about some of your own favorite Trauma films or obscure, weird, gross 80s cartoons. Lord knows there are a lot of them. As usual, I'd like to say a special thanks to John Algetz, Keith McRae, Warren Miller, Andreas Strauss, and all my other patrons for supporting me. You guys are the best. And if you're out there enjoying my work and wondering how you can support me, there's a link to my Patreon page in the description where, For a small donation, you can get access to stuff like preview clips and early peeks at some of my other projects, like this Usagi Yojimbo fan comic I'm doing. And if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell for many more videos about movies, cartoons, comic books, video games, and much more. See you then, everybody. Bye bye.